Hello and welcome into latest edition of Extra Time. Thank you as always for your tweets. Craig Burley is here, as is former teammate Danny Higginbotham. Danny, lots of questions for you. A lot about your relationship with Craig when you played with each other. We talked about this in the show. For Danny, how was Craig Burley as a teammate at Derby? I'm just say as a work colleague, you couldn't ask for worse. Complains about everything all the time. Was he like that as a footballer?
You must have played football with him. You must have done, because that's exactly how it was. But he was the captain. And the thing was, I played, like, obviously it was central midfield and I was either centre back or left back. So more often than not, when I made a mistake, he just looked over his shoulder. And sometimes it wouldn't be even words. It was actually worse. It'd just be a shake of the head as if to look as if to say, what are you doing? But no, Craig was good. You know, he was someone that I admired as well, because I was 21 years of age. You know, and I'm coming to Derby, and he was one of the players that stood out when the club was sold to me by Jim Smith. And then when I went in there, you'd rather have him. I'm not just giving compliments because he's doing the show and what have you, but you'd rather have him as a teammate than not, because when you got into the dressing room, what I liked was that he would say whatever he felt, but it wasn't personal. It was said at the time, and it was all to try and make you a better player. And he would listen to opinions of the younger players as well, even though at times he'd say that, you know, the one thing that's wrong with football is these younger players. But he used to listen to our opinions as well. Probably take no notice, go off on a tangent with himself at times. But no, he was a great teammate. And like I say, unfortunately, it was probably, like I said, I think it was for 2.5 years in a very turbulent time at Derby.
Danny, the best Premier game that you've done this season?
I'd probably go to Sheffield United versus Manchester United. You know, Sheffield United, for me, you know, they've been unbelievable this season. I think Chris Wilder should be Premier League Manager of the Year. And they played really well in that game. They went 2-0 up. And then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made a couple of substitutions.
Wait, Danny, why should Chris Wilder be Premier League Manager of the Year when Jurgen Klopp's only lost one game? He's breaking all the records. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Why does it make no sense? Because they would have won the Premier League last season if Manchester City weren't so great. What I do, I always look at comparisons to the previous season. If you look at comparisons to the previous season, then you see just how well a manager's done. Yes, Jurgen Klopp, he's gone one step beyond us in terms of winning the Premier League and winning it at a canter, which you're quite rightly saying. But this is a Sheffield United team that got promoted from the Championship. So many people said they were going to go straight down. He's not changed their style of play. Still have a possibility of breaking into the top 5, top 4. On a very small budget, what he's done it on as well. And look at the performances that he's had against some unbelievable teams. This is a Liverpool team that you look at. You know, they've got some of the most expensive defenders in the world, one of the most expensive goalkeepers in the world. They're incredible. So I compare it to last season and what Sheffield United did last season. Yes, they got promoted automatically from the Championship, but to finish where they're looking like they could finish, you know, I don't care whether Jurgen Klopp wins the Premier League by, you know, however many points it is. To me, it has to be Chris Wilder just because of what he's done.
Danny.
Yeah.
Danny, ignore him. Ignore him. He's an elitist. Outside Liverpool, Man U, Chelsea, and a couple of others, he doesn't care.
So he's part of the snobbery. He's part of the snobbery brigade.
He's very much part of the snobbery brigade. It's all about the big wigs for Daniel. It's all about the big wigs. Doesn't recognise the Chris Wilders of this world. They don't exist. They don't exist. Is that right, Dan Thomas?
Hey, what about this? What if Jurgen Klopp took over at Sheffield United and Wilder's over at Liverpool?
But I tell you what.
Who's your money on to replicate that success?
I tell you what, it was no surprise. Let me just go back a little bit. But there's no surprise Danny shoehorned Man United into the best game of the season anyway. But that's a point for another day. Yeah. I'll come back to that. There's no doubt Jurgen Klopp is, you know, statistically a better manager at the top level than Chris Wilder. That's not to take away from what Chris Wilder has done with the clubs he's been at, like Northampton. I think maybe it was certainly Oxford as a player, and at Sheffield United, the way they've played this year has been. Put it another way. What's the biggest surprise? That Liverpool are top of the league, or Sheffield United, depending what happens with the rest of the season, might get in the Champions League? What's the biggest surprise, Dan Thomas?
That Liverpool are top of the league by 25 points over Manchester City, who came into this looking to win it 3 times in a row.
They lost Vincent Kompany. They lost Kompany. They lost Laporte. Manchester City are worse than last season.
That's got nothing to do with what Liverpool have done. The fact that Sheffield United are so high up just shows how bad the rest of the Premier League have been.
No, Sheffield United have been incredible, and it's okay saying you can't swap Chris Wilder and Jurgen Klopp and say how would they do. I'll tell you now, Jurgen Klopp would not have got Sheffield United where they are now. Absolutely no chance whatsoever. I remember watching and covering Sheffield United.
So now we've got it, Danny. Now we've got it. He's not only shoehorning Man United into the best game, he hates Jurgen Klopp. Dan, first show on,
I love Jurgen Klopp and I respect Liverpool. As a United supporter, I don't love
Jurgen Klopp would fail at Sheffield United. They would have got relegated under Jurgen Klopp.
Yes, now they would have changed the system. So there you go. And before this season started, their record transfer was £4 million as well. How many £4 million players play for Liverpool now?
Oh dear.
We've caught a big one, Dan. We've caught a big one. We've caught a big one.
Craig, I thought you and me catching him. He's playing us off against each other.
Easy.
Okay. Let's move on. Ronaldinho, bicycle kick against Villarreal, or the Cristiano Ronaldo bicycle kick against Juventus. Which one are you having, Danny?
I'm going to go for Ronaldinho against Villarreal. Yes, I know Ronaldo played for Manchester United, Craig, so that can be taken out of the equation. But I just feel that the circumstances with it, he had to take a first touch on his chest, and I think then he had to completely change his direction. He had to completely change his bearings and everything, and doing that with his back to goal was absolutely incredible. Yes, Ronaldo's was magnificent as well, as in terms of how high up he got to get it. But he had one thing to go for, whereas Ronaldinho, he had to chest it and then reorganise himself to then get the shot on target. So I'm going for Ronaldinho because of that. And Ronaldinho nearly signed for Manchester United as well.
Craig won't remember the Ronaldinho one, will you, Craig?
Is that what he sent me today? Our producer. He sent me this text message about 3 hours ago. It had 2 links on it, and then he says, and then beneath it he said, who's the best penalty taker ever? And I'm like, what a random question that is. So I sent him back, Gabriel Jesus, as we know. I don't know,
yes.
Ronaldo overhead kick. You know I talked about that the other night.
Right, good. Let's move on to that second question that you were sent to think about, mull over, maybe do some research. Best penalty taker ever. Who are you going for, Danny?
Yeah.
Well,
me.
What I've got to say as well, to Craig's defence, he did spend an hour and a half talking to me earlier today. So I think that probably took most of his, what he had available to listen to me. But I'm going to go for
life. That took life. Dan, that took life out of me. That's the only thing available.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sticking up for you.
It's like every day.
I'm going to go for Matt Letizia. As in terms of best penalty, 47 out of 48. I took, I think, 13 and scored 13, so I didn't miss one, but I didn't take as many as him. So, I'm going for Matt Letizia.
Did you ever take 3 in a game? That's pressure. Have I mentioned that, Dan?
Was that Bradford City?
Yeah. And you missed the last one.
You were there then, were you?
Year before I came, that was. I remember it though. Keeper should have saved 2 of them.
I did miss I did miss the last one, Dan, but it was the stepping up. It was the stepping up and taking the responsibility was the highlight.
Craig, I had one.
Yep.
So
good.
Obviously you must have been injured at the time, I think. We played Bolton away and Rab was the penalty taker. If you remember, he missed one against Liverpool and he missed one against Newcastle. See, I know Craig's really enjoying this. And he was crying in the dressing room after the Liverpool miss. And we played Bolton away, and we got a penalty, and Rav's got the ball in his hand. And I've just gone up to him, like I say, 22-year-old kid, and I said, Rav, don't worry about it, you'll score this, and, you know, just as a throwaway line, I'll take it if you want. He gave me the ball. And I was like, oh, no, what am I going to do now? So fortunately, I did score. My brother jumped onto the pitch and got arrested and chucked out the ground. So it was a good day all round.
Blimmin' heck. Ravanelli, big-time bottler, says former teammate Danny Higginbotham. That's interesting claim.
Hey, listen. Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Dan earlier, as he mentioned, Danny, and listen, you know how that story I tell Dan on the show about Rory Delap not telling Jim Smith he had the long throw? And I thought to myself,
yep,
am I making this up? Am I making this up, or is that really the case? Well, I was talking to Danny earlier, and we were reminiscing about that because we're both, you know, particularly Danny, he's been a good friend with Rory for years. And I said to Danny, was I, you know, dreaming about that? Did Rory really not have the long throw at Derby? He says, it's worse than that. Both of them went to Southampton after Derby, and he never told anybody at Southampton either. I mean, it's just incredible.
It was, Craig. But the best thing was that when Tony Pulis realised he had a long throw, so we were doing like shape, because Tony loved to work on shape from Tuesday till Friday. Then we had the game on the Saturday, and we were basically defending crosses coming into the box, and Rory was just walking around the pitch because I think he was maybe a bit injured, but he was going to be okay for the game. So Tony just said to him, he said, Rory, he said, just get the ball and just lob us a few balls in. So everyone's expecting him to get it in one arm and just overhead it into the box. He picks it up and gets it in a normal throwing position and just launches it into the box. If you could have seen Tony Pulis' face, he hit gold, he struck gold, and everybody was like, wow. And then from then on, you know, I didn't see any team deal with it well at all. It wasn't so much the distance he got on it, but it was the trajectory and the power, and there was so many own goals scored from it, and it was just incredible. I remember we played against Hull, and the ball went back to Hull's goalkeeper, and instead of putting it out for a throw, he put it out for a corner. It was just, everyone was scared of it, but yeah, that was Rory. He probably didn't know he had it himself.
Danny, in which FA Cup final did you feel confident to win more, 2003 or 2011?
Possibly 2011 one, I would say, because 2003 was when Arsenal were right at their pomp, and just beating us 6-2 in the league. And then 2011, you know, we'd had a really good season, have done well against some of the bigger clubs, and coming up against Manchester City, you know, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that might have been their first bit of silverware. So I think, you know, we fancied our chances going into that game. We ended up losing 1-0. But that was a great season for everybody. I ended up missing the FA Cup final because I think I did my cruciate about 3 or 4 weeks before the final took place. But I would say we're probably more confident going into that game against Manchester City than we were against Arsenal.
How much did you enjoy playing at Stoke?
Loved it. My favourite time in my career. Tony Pulis was a manager that was very good at bringing in characters, very similar really to Derby to a certain extent. Craig will tell you there was some really good lads there and good characters, but we had a dressing room at Stoke which was, yes, he wanted good players, but he wanted characters that could go on the pitch, and if one player was hurt, everybody was hurt. And I think that was, you know, that was behind a lot of our success. And Stoke's a working class area, and the players that were brought in, working class players as well, and they just got it. And for a certain period of time, the supporters and the players were as one, and it goes without saying, it was, you know, the favourite part of my career without question, with some really enjoyable times and some great results.
Good question this, Danny. How were you eligible to declare for the Gibraltar national team?
I bet Craig wants to answer this, doesn't he? I can just see he's just desperate just to throw something. Right, so my uncle was manager at the time, and I'd been asked a few years previously, you know, whether I'd get involved with them, but they weren't recognised by FIFA or UEFA at the time, so it wouldn't have made much sense to them. Now, my mum is full Spanish, but my grandma is Gibraltarian. So it is through blood. It isn't because, you know, I went to Gibraltar for a weekend and did whatever there. Nothing like that. So it was through blood, and it was a great experience for me. They wanted me to carry on through the Euros, but I couldn't justify it because I was retiring from football because I'd had enough of the day-to-day side of things in the game. So, you know, it was short and sweet. I played a few games for them, enjoyed it, and it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you very much then, Craig. Thank you, Danny, as well. Much appreciated. We will be back tomorrow